certified containers. I mean, containers which have the Khronos label, so developers can rely on them. Maybe one binary and another one non-binary, not to delve into explanation.
I just make an observation here. In the early days of mobile web, there were companies out there who were doing things like taking your nice RGB image off a website and stripping out the colors and sending the JPEG down in a reduced color density and resolution because it was going on a mobile device. And so we've always been in the mobile business and done a couple of mobile startups. Bandwidth is really key, and and just the explosion of iPads and the issues we're going to run into when we start to do real 3D graphics over 4G phones. It's, right, and a massive scale that everybody's doing it, that every website is 3G, then we need this. We need something that works from Collada, that has a good transport, that is compressed.
Yes, no, I agree. So the initiatives that are happening just bring people up to speed. I mean, we don't really have a clear direction, but as again, as we were talking briefly, there is MPEG group. Now, it's actually interesting if you draw those 4 boxes. The other 3 boxes for images, music, and video, they were all actually solved by MPEG. So the natural inheritor of that empty box is MPEG, but they have been working on it for over 10 years, but no one's using it, and so everyone's a bit confused, and no one has a clarity from them whether or not their 3D stuff is going to be royalty free or not, because their other stuff isn't. And although the video community seems to be kind of coping with royalty, I don't think the 3D community will adopt anything with a royalty. So we have a meeting, there's an AR standards meeting coming up in about 2 weeks in Austin, and the MPEG chair of that working group that's working on 3D compression is going to come and give us the clarity that we've been looking for. And then we can decide whether, as a community, whether that's a good direction forward, or do we want to do something else. So we can report back. That's an open public meeting, so we can report back on what transpires now. The other stuff that's going on, Ken Russell, who's coming here for the WebGL meetup in a little while. Google have been working on some compression schemes. And they're, I think, interested to see whether there's interest to adopt that into a standard too. So
there's actually interesting stuff in the Google Body implementation. They open sourced that a little while ago. So the compression modeling is actually quite interesting in a sense that it helps with the issues, but it's also very portable. And
I think it's mentioned that the challenge we're going to have is there are many different types of 3D format. That's going to be the devil's in the details.
Right.
Yeah. Just I wonder at which point the JSON stuff could become a concrete discussion with a new working group or something like that, or what could trigger that. And one suggestion could be to extend the start as an experiment within Open Collada, because everybody is having its own format JSON anyway today.
Yes.
So why not trying to experiment a JSON format inside Open Collada so that stakeholders of Khronos can have an eye on it,
right.
And at some point when it looks mature, try to maybe stamp it somewhere with a working group, but start an experiment within Open Collada, just to get things concrete and see the traction around it.
Yes, that's a good idea, and I think that's a good example of how we can get community energy and the consortium organisation actually working in a really beneficial way. Because eventually, if we do want an API and we want to have a IP protection through the ratification process that Khronos offers, we want to go through the formal process. But it'd be great to be taking something that's proven to be capable and wanted by the industry before we take it through ratification.
I would volunteer in that effort. Yeah.
You just signed.
Sign here.
Yeah. Anyway, I'm working for Motorola Mobility, so maybe I'll be at Google tomorrow. I don't know what happened. As of today, I would be happy to jump in.
Sure.
And if other people wants to try that.
Sure.
Mm.
Okay. We'll definitely take a look
Okay.
at that.
So, with how WebGL, I mean, is really new to a lot of people, and they do look at things like, you know, learnwebgl.org and all these different sites. How are you guys looking to embrace, or I mean, other than the meetup group which you sponsored, thank you very much. How are you looking to, as people are coming and saying, hey, what's the best way to do this pipeline of assets?
Uh-huh.
How are you promoting Open Colada to those guys?
Right.
So as they come in with kind of this whole new fresh set of eyes of saying, okay, this is the direction we need to go.
Yeah.
What's the best way to do it? Oh, it's Open Colada here and this way here, and then here's cool use cases of
Yeah.
where someone's implemented it and that
Yeah.
kind of thing. What is your, let's say, rest of 2012? How do we engage those guys, or is that a?
That's a great question.
Okay.
But that kind of thing is achievable.
Right.
You know, as long as we have the vision of what it is we want to communicate,
Right.
you know, who the community is. You know, we have relatively good visibility into the WebGL community in various ways. I think we can pump it up definitely, and I think this will be a kind of a message that would resonate with a lot of people. So I think it would, you know, get out there pretty quickly.
Okay.
But having clarity on what it is we actually want to communicate,
Right.
that's the first step. Right. Okay. Anything else on WebGL? No, and that's it. So that's the end of this slide. So, any other thoughts? So, I think I'm glad you're not laughing at it. That's good. So there's been some really good ideas that have come out from here. I mean, would people, so what do we do next steps? And we'll definitely take it back into the working group. But actually I want to kind of keep this conversation out in the open more than having it in the working group. Well, what is the best, let's just start at the basics. What is the best way to keep in touch? Should we set up an email list? I mean, something as simple as that, or do we want something more?
An email list is a starting point. I mean, you know, Facebook page, I mean, social media is not, you know, it's pick your favorite social media poison, whether it's Twitter or Facebook or something like that. All of that,
Yes.
you know, works.
Yep.
I think having a set of agreed actions, I like concrete.
Yeah.
You know, and having to say, okay, we've taken our community input. You know, here's phase one is gather, right? You know, plan, execute, review.
Yep.
Right. You know, so okay, so who's putting the plan together? Right. Who's looking for the people who can execute the plan? It presents the vision,
Yeah.
because what I see today is useful. It's inquiry,
Yeah.
but you know,
We have to take tangible
what
action, right?
the action items is right,
Yeah.
and then the question, you know, the question there is how is it decided? Is it, you know, Kronos will make recommendations, or what's the decision-making process to sort of go to the next level?
Right. So, I mean, does anyone have experience with this? I mean, it sounds like you had some experience with these foundations, open source.
I work in the open source communities in other areas. Yeah. Right.
So-
And I've you know, spent a lot of time looking at what's made open source successful and not successful.
Yes.
But,
So what kind of decision-making mechanisms have you seen work?
I don't know that any of them work per se. I mean, I can point to examples in various communities. Right. You know, like Linux is very clear. It's Linus and you know, the people who check the code in
Right.
that decides it. Right. So that's
Right.
so there are many. That's one model. Right.
Right. The benign dictator model.
Right.
Right.
The Postgres one, where there is an architect, but and a bunch of committers who are signed up to commit into that. But everything's debated on an email group that gets hundreds of messages a day. And
Right.
I think that's dysfunctional, but nevertheless, they've been around since the 80s and somewhat successful.
Right.
Right. So I don't think there's one model that works. And you can look at these other communities and say, how do they work? I mean, you can study Mozilla and things like that. But I think you've got to. Sorry, I mean, I don't mean talking generalizations, but I think you've got to find something that works. And so the best way I would say is throw out a straw man. And say, okay, let's create a Collada, Open Collada Foundation or Collada Foundation. Right? We'll pick a name, and here's our charter, here's our mission, here's our vision. Right? Here's how we're going to be funded. And then start to shop that. Right? And then, people sign up and write you checks, or engineers.
And let someone new forces have their way again. Right.
Right.
It evolves in the direction that this particular community finds most useful.
Right.
For being responsive so that can actually happen.
Right. And the mission of the foundation, and sorry, that part back in the foundation, is, some very concrete goals, right, and deliverables that we want to sign up to.
Right.
And the model is you look at this community or that community and
I think the figure of Linus and the guys following the show could be here the one the Kronos group would have, the foundation, being the people asking for priorities, and the decision-making body coming out from the Kronos group. So there is a lot of incubation, a lot of people joining the foundation, and they can also act also their efforts.
Right.
But the final goal is the Kronos group, and people helping us there can also have a say in the priority of the problems to be addressed, the issues to be solved, and the improvements to be made.
I think it's important to keep in mind that the working group at Kronos is already intended to consist of all the stakeholders, right? I mean, presumably people that are interested in joining the foundation that we're discussing, they should also be interested in joining the working group. And
I agree in principle, but I think that's one of the things that if you're an Apple or a Google, or for the acceleration APIs, if you're an AMD, an Intel, or NVIDIA, whatever, it's worth the money, But the problem we're getting, we've not engaged the community effectively.
Right.
And the membership fee is too high a barrier.
Right.
So in this case, I think we really do need, I kind of agree, perhaps the working group is the right place to, because we have the IP framework and stuff, but we need this, a foundation is a good word, which is a circle around the working group, so we can actually get the community engaged.
I completely agree with that. The reason why I said what I said was more about who's the decision maker, right? I mean...
Right. So if people care enough to be a decision maker,
right.
Kronos membership is open to anybody.
Right.
So if people really care, there's no barrier.
Right.
But we shouldn't assume everyone who can contribute is going to be able to or want to put the money all the time into Kronos membership.
The key point I wanted to make is it's not Kronos per se that is going to make the decisions and decide what is going to be developed and what not. It's essentially the same people out there that have an interest, a shared interest in things that should and would make the decisions, I think. Or I don't think you want to be there and say, this is how Collada
there is
going to look in 2 years from now, right?
In this sense, there is no Kronos.
Right,
There's
exactly.
just the
That's
members.
my point.
Yeah, Kronos is by the members, for the members. There is no big Kronos agenda. It's the members that are deciding what happens.
Right.
For people to get involved, there seems, at least we need to give them this vision. I mean, there's one way to go. There's one goal, mid-term, long-term, short-term, whatever. And for this, you're going to have a body, a head, right? But we're not talking companies here. We're talking the indie guy who gets home after work and wants to give a hand.
Right.
Maybe put some money, maybe put some effort, maybe both, and tells his friends and such. And maybe when he and some other colleagues at their company realize they're both working there, they can blame their company, maybe at a different level, maybe with membership.
Yeah.
But we are missing that point
Yes.
of that now, right?
Yes.
And I think there's a lot of effort we could bring from that.
Yes.
One way would have to be to have open cloud adopted by some open source SDK, Cave engine or whatever. So, I mean, it has to be adopted indirectly for most of the time.
Yeah. So if we do establish a foundation, pragmatically, again, looking for tangible action steps, would we, in your experience, would you need to find someone who's willing to lead it?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's key because you know, you look at Linux and who you know, how that is community is driven.
Right.
I think you'll find behind all most successful communities, there's a few people who are, you know, who stand up, and Linus is an exceptional guy, right? You know, who stand up head and shoulders and say, you know, hey, you know, this is my life, my soul, right? I'm committed to this, right? I'm going to make it work, right? And so there's that notion of accountability, right? You know, so I think you've got to put the element in there that you know, somebody's, well, in this case it may not be livelihood, but reputation, stature is on the line to make this work, right? And they're sufficiently technically skilled and charismatic to drive that, right? That's having that is a success factor. Not having that means it's not impossible, but
much more difficult.
It's potentially.
And we can make that, if you can find such a person, that person, we can bring them into the working group too, so he can be the kind of the bridge between the two.
Yeah, but you know, unless unless there's a name that rolls off your tongue, I mean, then I think you can also look at other potential leadership models around the foundation, right? You know, I don't think you should. It lives or dies by just finding the key figure, but I think you want a strong leadership cadre around this who've got a lot of investment, because that's another way of doing it. Right.
There's another model to look at. That's the way the Eclipse Foundation runs things.
Which one?
Eclipse Foundation.
Eclipse, right.
So Mike Milinkovich runs the Eclipse Foundation. What he spends most of his time doing is going around talking to people that are using Eclipse and putting them in touch with other people. So he's not like Linus slaved away for years to get his kernel going, get his operating system running, and now he still keeps that role long into the future. Mike runs things in sort of a different way. He doesn't really get involved in most of the projects. He basically just works with the people who are involved and keeps everything moving forward. So it's a good example of another structure that has worked well for 10 years now.
Yeah, that's an interesting model.
This way, foundation is bigger than any personalities involved in management. So I also think that could be a way to go. I mean, if such a prominent personality is already in the group, I think that's a shot we can think of, right? Because there's a background of involvement. If we're searching for a rock star from outside the group who has not been actually involved, we're losing credibility, right? So if no one can step in and say, okay, I shall do it, I'm willing to bear the flag, we could think of it the other way around, having the foundation have the credibility, having the foundation become the actor itself.
If I, in interim though, because I know especially in this city, right, finding someone who's charismatic, has the bandwidth to do it for such big pay. If you can find those, hey, we can go in business and something else and be way more lucrative, right? But in the interim of finding that person who in time will be the right fit, it's the whole teacher, when the student is ready, teacher appears thing. how about for Open Collada, and again, I'll talk with the people that I've been collaborating with, that we say, hey, look, here's this foundation that's coming out, but other than just, hey, here's another group, okay, cool, Cigar Club, here are the first objectives that we're going to hit. Here are our action items. We're going to try to solve this problem to help go beyond just 3ds, 3ds Maya, and then see who are the tools and the people who are going to say, hey, no, I'll throw some skin in the game. I'll definitely say, I'll contribute. And then that way we at least show that it's not just, here's an organization that formed and now what do we do?
Right.
It's here's an organization that formed and we're solving these issues right out of the gate.
Right.
And here's the interim president, until better presents itself.
Right.
I know of people that I feel very comfortable saying they would definitely be involved in that. And again, these are people who are willing to contribute, not coming to Kronos or these others and say, hey, solve our problems and pay for it.
Yes. Right.
That I would like to see. But again, I don't want those people who want to fix those problems now have to say, wait, this foundation has to be formed first and all these other things. But it would be cool, though, if they are going to invest this effort, that this could be like those showcase examples that could help drive something like a foundation.
Right.
To show the value add to a variety of different stakeholders of, hey, this is why you want to participate in another organization.
Yes. Yes, no, I agree. That's interesting. Be result and action driven.
Wow!
I think
a construction that does stuff, It's
given where things are at right now, I think that's probably the most successful model. It's probably not ideal for the long term, but I think doing as grassroots as possible and putting objectives up that people can rally behind, and then just getting things moving, I think that is the way to go. I think if we had a rockstar maintainer already on the working group, I think some of these issues that we were talking about wouldn't be there. The fact is that there's a distinct lack of that now, and we're looking for a model that is successful without having that person necessarily.
Yeah, and I mean, this rockstar thing is more like a political. In politics, it works for a party, but here maybe the best representative is to have a great application working based on Collada or Open Collada, and to make this happen, it's some evangelism, contacting key people working on technology that could adopt it or as it already, like Blender, for instance, and make sure that everything works very smoothly, and that will spread across different countries, much more than a charismatic leader locally in the Bay Area.
Yes.
But do we realize this would be a full-time job? I mean, the chosen one must be willing to join this venture.
Yeah, I'm not.
And everything apart.
If you heard me, I said I was not into this chosen one thing.
Huh?
Yeah, I was saying that it has to be people involved, some people involved too, but the path from where Open Collada is and something that was great for everybody, I'm maybe over-optimistic, but I don't think it's so far away. There are issues, but it's not so far away. And if there is, say, one focus on some key application, then it will bring traction for other people to adopt Open Collada as well. So I mean, the best representative in our industry is maybe an app more than a person. I'm not sure. Yeah.
Typically, you'll find that if someone emerges, it'll be someone whose everyday existence really depends on this. So it's not like they're being pulled in two different directions. It's just like their participation and their contribution to the group actually accelerates what they needed to do anyway. I mean, that's kind of what tends to.
So assuming we can fix the Open Collada problem, right, is that the key barrier to the adoption of Collada? I mean, have we really sort of looked at the next step ahead beyond that? And
well,
what are people saying that?
I think it is the critical short-term issue. I mean, the roadmap discussions, like people want more functionality, but we have too much functionality as it is right now. and perhaps subsetting it down in various ways. But there is some like roadmap and spec work to be done. But this is the big issue. When also we can't just do it and not tell anyone. So as we've discussed, we have to evangelize and communicate and get the message out there at the same time.
But that then means, then what's the definition of success? Is it that Open Collada gets implemented in Blender, Maya, you know?
Yeah, I think.
Well, it is. Question is it in shape to be successfully usable for most pipelines that involve those tools? I think the definition of success would be that the issues that people are having right now using that software are addressed and they're more satisfied with the resulting pipeline. That would be one very specific success that I would define.
And that's interesting. I think you can, ripping off that, you can define very specifically what our short-term success would be. Right? You have to know when you got there. It would be a list of applications that we want, altering tools that we want to address, and they all pass the conformance test that we define, right? Which is conformance test being the bar that we think people have to cross to make it useful as an authoring pipeline.
But, okay, with all due respect to conformance tests, I'm going to again, is that, is there any more than that? It goes beyond. So.
Well, and then having because you're right, conformance tests are never complete, obviously.
Right.
But having the mechanisms and infrastructure in place that, where people do hit the inevitable problems, they're enabled and motivated to fix them. So there's an engine fitted there.
So there's a support organization who can support and enhance and drive it beyond that to meet. Sorry, I can't remember. Your needs, your needs of the industry needs. So,
I want to add on this, and it's been helping me, particularly this in English. I find that Collada currently is not consistently bundled widely enough. You install a 3D content suite, and you find it has Collada support, which is not the best you can have. So then you look for, you search the internet because you want Collada support, because you have content you want to use inside the tool. And there is another Collada. People don't usually think of it as the same stuff. You have Open Collada, people think of F Collada, then they read stuff about filling software, and they don't perceive it as one single thing. That there is no trust. Most people will know that it is.
Right.
And also, if it was bundled consistently enough, I don't even mean widely enough, but what you get bundled works out of the box. No problems, badge, model, character, you name it. I think that would really help in improving the awareness and also the trust.
I agree. I think that comes down to what we were saying earlier, this making Open Collada kind of the reference implementation.
And so the action item 0 would be a communication from Kronos blessing Open Collada.
Right. And would people be cool with that? I mean,
yeah, because it's the chicken of an egg.
Yes.
Even if it's not perfect, it will bring traction into it, and having people maybe.
Right, it sets the direction, right?
Yes.
I think
It's a concrete step, and the other question is, what's the alternative, right?
Right.
Is there another alternative open source implementation of Collada?
No.
I think that
There is
So it's an easy decision.
Yeah.
It's kind of an easy decision.